Welcome to Your College Bound Kid,
podcast for parents and families everywhere.
Whether you have kids that plan to attend college or you have current college students, you want them in and you want them to graduate.
And you want a quality education that changes your life in very positive ways. I am Mark Stucker, and I'm a college coach.
And I am Anika Madden, and I am a parent. It is Thursday, March 28th, and welcome to episode number 61. What admissions counselors look for in a personal essay. In this week's news, what the college admissions scandal reveals about the psychology of wealth in America. And we're in chapter 61 of 171 answers, and the title is What College Admissions Counselors Look For in a Personal Statement or a Main Essay. And this week's question is from a mom who wants to know how to help her child make their final decision on which college to attend. And Mark will continue his interview with Susan Tree in part 3 of Writing the Personal Essay. Don't miss your opportunity to fill in the gaps and bring yourself to life.
Good evening, friends. For the last 6 weeks, in our introduction, Anika and I have been sharing some results from a study that was done at Cornell University, often referred to as their legacy study, where they surveyed 1,565-year-olds and asked them what their biggest regrets are in life. And we're just going through these partly to get Anika's reaction. She's like super quick on her feet over here. She's learning about them when you learn about them. But the biggest reason really is so that we don't make the same mistakes they've made. We're trying to learn from these wise old souls. So Number 8 was taking care of the body. Number 7, not taking enough career risks. Number 6, not being honest in life. Number 5, spending too much time in life worrying. Number 4, not traveling internationally early in life. Number 3, not saying I loved you enough or at all to your loved ones. And number 2 could be somewhat similar to number 3, not resolving a family squabble. Thoughts, Anika?
Why do I laugh after all the ones that you give?
Is it guilt?
Not on my part. Yeah, I mean, I hear that loud and clear. Family squabbles be all over the place. So I can totally understand that, but I can totally understand the need to squash them and get rid of them and talk them out and all that good stuff. But we know it's the reality that it's not, it don't always happen like that. But I feel it. I understand it.
Yeah, maybe someday I'll share this 50-year squabble inside the extended Stucker household, but not for another day. Let's getting a little too personal.
We like personal. We like the personal.
Let's turn to college hot topics in the news.
All right, Mark, we're going to continue on with this scandal this week. And this article that we're talking about, it's entitled, What the College Admissions Scandal Reveals About the Psychology of Wealth in America. And this is found on Vox.com. It's written by Miss Anna North. And so when the Department of Justice revealed that dozens of people were accused of bribery and lying so their kids could get in these elite colleges, one question kept coming up, and that is why? Why in the world would these parents risk criminal charges even when their kids don't even need a degree to support themselves? And so, Mark, the author, she starts with a comment from a psychology professor that he's saying that basically a degree from a selective school for anyone, including the rich, is the marker of success. Success, yeah, but a marker of status. And he says it's kind of like a Maserati or living in the right neighborhood. And Mark, I just want to go ahead and jump to the statement that the author makes that she says that the admissions scandal could cause a lot of people to reevaluate their beliefs about wealth and success as Americans realize how rich people can buy things. But, Mark, before you dive in, because I feel like this is quite a bold statement that Ms. North has made here. And I get that she's saying that, this scandal is, in some people's eyes, now they can see that wealth doesn't mean that you always earn your money and you don't always earn your way through things. But I would dare to say and suggest that there are thousands of wealthy people out there that are ethical, that do work hard, and that don't cheat their way through life. So I wasn't quite getting the point that she was trying to make. And I suppose I mean, are we supposed to take on a new view of wealth and success just because of these 50 crazy people? I mean, so, okay, yeah, help me out with this, please.
I did not take it that way. So I did not assume she was saying this is how the wealthy or the mega wealthy or the billionaire class, whatever group you want to call them, are. I think she just said there's a portion of people that react this way. And in the article, she even went on to highlight is this type of behavior is much more prevalent with some people may call them the nouveau riche, or as she said, people that got their wealth but never really achieved college degree success themselves in their own life. Let me read. Can I read some of my favorite quotes of this article, Anika?
Go right ahead.
I really loved this article because I think we do need to think, why is it that some of these families would do this? I mean, this one family, Anika, and you can probably say the name better than me, the clothing designer that worked at the Target, the husband, married to the actress.
Oh, okay, cannot.
Designer dude. We'll call him designer dude.
Designer dude. We'll take that.
This is a family worth $100 million. This is a guy who was getting put the house on the market for $35 million. Why would you need to do this? So here are a couple of quotes that jumped off to the page about me about this. One, a degree from a selective college is a marker of status, kind of like a Maserati or living in the right neighborhood. So this is according to Paul Piff, and he's a psychology professor at the University of California, Irvine, and he's actually studied social class and how social class, operates. He goes on to say, it's kind of a rat race of constantly trying to preserve and seek out these status symbols that showcase to others that you're really doing well. And he goes on and to say, for some parents, getting your kid into a good school, even if they have to break the rules to do so. So notice how he said for some parents. So I didn't really take it as all rich people. It may function as a kind of proof that their wealth and social status are well deserved. And I was talking, our listeners, our regular listeners now know that my good friend Dave, we had on for episodes 55 through 58, talking about So You Want to Be a Doctor. We know that we talk almost daily. And so I was telling him, Dave, we're going to talk about this article. And I read it. And he said, in other words, what you're saying is that a college degree from a prestigious school is a Gucci purse. It's like a Gucci purse. It's like another ornament that signals to people, I'm arrived. I'm of value. And so here are a couple more things that jumped off to me, in the article that I thought were kind of profound. So, but parents in the income bracket of Laughlin, and I'm going to tempt it, Anika, Giannulli. See, this is what I get for taunting you on names all the time.
I'll take
God has a sense of humor.
Exactly.
I got to throw some of these names back at me.
We would like to thank every listener who has financially supported our show.
We want to make sure that our friends of the show know that you absolutely can make a one-time gift, or you can sign up for one of our monthly giving levels. Recently, we received a lovely letter from a college counselor who made a gift and said she wants to support the show quarterly, and that is also okay.
And if you make a one-time gift or a quarterly gift, you may still be entitled to the same benefits we extend to our monthly donors.
That's right. For a gift of $60 or more within the first 12 months, you'll get all the benefits we provide in our Sustainer plan. And a gift of $120 or more in the first 12 months, and you'll get all the benefits we offer in our Expander plan.
So to support the show, all you have to do is go to yourcollegeboundkid.com and click the donate button. Either click the monthly gift tab or the one-time gift tab.
And be sure to visit our frequently asked question page, which is also located at yourcollegeboundkid.com for more details. This is also where you can learn about the Sustainer plan and the Enhancer plan.
Your financial support helps us defray the sizable expenses that it takes to deliver all of this great content that is aimed to empower you and your family's college admissions journey.
Different people have different abilities to give, but whatever you can contribute will be greatly appreciated, and it will allow us to remain commercial free. So thank you in advance.
Thank you.
All right, so the article goes on to say, college isn't just about getting a job, according to Piff. And remember, this Piff is studying this stuff, he's a scholar, studies this stuff. It's also about social standing. He says this: money is but a small part of class and privilege in America. Another big part of that is belonging to the right clubs, knowing the right things to do when you go to a restaurant, knowing the right kind of restaurants to go to, having read the right kind of books. And what an education is, it's a marker of all sorts of important forms of privilege that are really, really valued. And then he says, this is especially true for people who became wealthy without going to college. And then it actually talks about another expert, Lisa Bernbach, who's the editor of the official Preppy Handbook. Have you read the official Preppy Handbook, Anika? Because I haven't either.
No.
What she says, but it's a subtitle, or it's also referred to as a humorous guide to wealthy WASP culture, and says, I believe there is a sense that this is going to elevate you. And then this is another fascinating part about this, Anika. So this Massimo Giannulli dude, he attended USC, but he dropped out without graduating. And
Right.
and the article goes on to say a degree is a total signifier of your place in the social strata of the country. So what does it tell me? So he probably always had this hole in his heart where he felt insecure that he attempted to go to college and never graduated, and maybe he might have questioned his own intelligence, his own worth, wondered if the right people he wanted to validate him, saw him as smart, saw him as intelligent, saw him as worthy. And he did what so many parents do. They try to vicariously live through their kids. Well, I never made it through, so I'll make sure my daughter makes it through, and then I will feel better as a result of this. And then here's one last quote I loved. Meanwhile, people of higher socioeconomic class are more likely than others to believe that their positions are fairly determined and just, as well as the part of who they actually are as people. And then Michael Kearns, who's a social psychologist at Yale, who actually studies inequality, he told Vox in the interview, he says, getting your children into an elite school may be a way to maintain that belief. You may be wealthy now, but if your kids don't achieve the same level of success you do, maybe that's evidence that it was luck, he explained. That kind of personal threat is a piece of what can motivate you. So you see this whole psychology going on. Right? You've got these trappings of success and prestige, and you've got insecurities being manifested in a way where people try to vicariously live through their kids. And I think it's instructive to all of us, because one of my absolute favorite quotes in college admissions is that college is a match to be made and not a prize to be won. But that's not what these people believe, right? And so what do you think, Anika?
I think I still don't. I mean, I do get it. I'm not going to say I don't get it, but I don't know. I just, there's so many, with that much money, there's so many other ways to establish your status. Like, I don't know. I mean, it's
here's another
disturbing.
way.
It's highly disturbing. And it's actually kind of sad if, when you put it in the terms of, just that insecurity felt as them as individuals. I mean, I'm not, feeling too sorry for them at this point for what they did, but still, these were emotions that they were dealing with and they were internalizing and being challenged with. So, I mean, that's something to understand, I suppose.
I mean, here's another way of putting it. And I wish I kept this quote, because I remember when I read this, I was like, ooh, that's profound. So as certain schools get harder and harder and harder to get in, that means their prestige is elevated, right? Like scarcity. Ooh, wow, you're one of the few ones to get in there? You must be really, really smart. And what happens with that is that a designer degree becomes almost the ultimate brand that somebody can have, because so many other things, like even I joked around about the Gucci purse, living in Bel Air or the right zip code, driving the Maserati or Bentley or, whatever car, joining the country club. A lot of those things can be attained strictly with money. But as long as the perception is out there in society that you really need to be really, really, really smart to get into elite schools, it becomes a badge and a status symbol, unlike even all those other things that merely you just need wealth to get entrance into the club. So
Wow.
does that make sense? So it
It
becomes like
does.
the ultimate ratification of your value in the pecking order for the social climbers. So I just think that's something really deep going on.
It
I've had
is.
a lot to think about this case. Anika, I'm sure you have. Any other thoughts at all on just the case in general, besides what we talked about last week?
No, I think what we can honestly do is I think we can pray for all of them. I mean, because that is some serious deep. I mean, that's some deep stuff going on, and I
We
just.
went spiritual on me. You could
I
spiritual on
mean,
me with that.
no, and because I mean, but when you do put it in those terms, it is sad. It's really
It is.
sad, and we all got our personal turmoils. Now, I'm gonna
Yeah.
tell you, if I
Yeah.
had that much money, I wouldn't be. Listen, tell you something. I just am pretty confident I would take a different angle, but
Okay.
I do recognize, like, just emotional and personal distress and sadness and voids and feeling empty and all that good stuff. That's real for anybody, regardless of how much money you have, for sure.
And it's also real because it like it in many cases this isn't what the kids wanted, it's what the parents needed out of their own
Right.
neediness. So,
Right. Yeah.
I mean, we can look at the kids and say, they're so privileged, they don't realize all the advantage they have. But another way of looking at it is to sort of realize it's sort of sad that, your parent didn't have enough confidence in you to just allow your own um talents and abilities to open up the doors for you, and they felt they needed to game the system. Like it's kind of
Yeah.
a reflection of their lack of confidence in you. But there are a couple more things I wanted to share, Nick, because I've been thinking about this case a lot.
Okay.
Touched on this last week, but I've been thinking a lot about what changes do I expect in college admissions, because there are going to be changes.
Mm-hmm.
And the biggest one by far is the level of scrutiny that is going to be placed on the admissions office. I mean, it's going to be placed on the athletic office, and it's already starting to happen. I mean, USC is opening an investigation into changes that are going to be made. I mean, Yale has already come out and said they want an outside investigation to look at the process and the policy that is giving these coaches so much power that it's almost like unchecked power. And this is Yale, where athletes have to get a certain score in what is known as the academic index, or AI, in order to be admitted. There is arguably more scrutiny on athletic recruiting in the Ivy League as there is at any other college or any other athletic league. Remember, the Ivy League was founded as a football conference in 1954 with explicit rules to prevent unethical athletic recruitment. To get in through
Yeah.
into the school who they want to get to the school without the scrutiny. So that's a big one that I'm absolutely expecting is going to apply to the situation. Another one, and this is kind of sad to me, Anika, but this singer dude, he started out as an independent educational consultant. Yeah, in fact, you know
Are
what?
you
Now I'm
serious?
gonna test your golf
Man, I did
knowledge.
not know that.
Did,
Wow.
do you know who Phil Mickelson is?
Dope.
See, you passed the test.
Yes, I
You passed
do.
the
Mark.
test. So yes, do you know Phil
Notice I just said,
Mickelson
yes, I
hired
do.
this
No, I'm
singer
just kidding.
guy to
Yeah, I
get his daughter into Brown? And there's actually a quote on
do.
his website
Wow.
from Mickelson praising the guy. And of course he's saying, "Look, I didn't even know this." He said, "I'm as shocked as
Wow.
anybody." But here's what I see is going to happen. There's going to be a lot more scrutiny brought to the profession of private college coaching, and to me, as someone who thinks it's a very noble and valuable service that we provide for people. It'd be like this. Let's say this whole scandal, came down and
Right.
some chiropractor was running some huge scam and faking people's backs were jacked up and doing all this. And if you were a chiropractor and you heard about this, you know what I mean? You might not like it that much. So, so I think there's going to be more scrutiny, and
Right.
I'm basing that even on things that I've heard this week. So I think that's another thing that we can expect. Something else we haven't talked about, Anika, but I think you're going to see more. There's definitely going to be more scrutiny. What we're going to talk about next week, which is how people game the system by faking learning disabilities in order to get more extended time, which we'll talk about next week. So I won't touch on that, but the test
Mm,
optional movement. So there are so many internal debates going on at colleges about whether
Mm.
to go test optional. And this is the kind of thing that just could knock a couple people over the edge and say, you know what, it's just not worth it. So
Wait. So are you saying that it's going to increase, like it's going to enhance that movement? What are you
yes,
saying around the
yes,
test optional?
yes, yes. Yeah. So think about it. You're a school, you're trying to decide whether to require test scores or not, right? So
Right.
in one column, what are all the check boxes for requiring test scores? One is it's the only common benchmark in the file. That's what my mission director used to tell me all the time. Mark, it's the only common benchmark in the file. Recommendations, grades, everything else is so subjective. You got that. You know that you've got kids in your school. You've seen kids that have straight A's and they have a 17 on the ACT, and another kid has straight A's and they got a 35. You know that's a different kid, and there's grade inflation. So
Mhm.
you feel like, we need this extra metric to be able to properly tell at what level of learning is this student in, because grades and recommendations are all over the place. So you got that in there. But then, on the other hand, you got all the other sides. So you got the stress it's bringing to kids. You got the fact that that um, test scores is so highly correlated with family income that there's already a built-in bias right away based on socioeconomics of the family background. You don't like the test prep culture out there that's stressing kids out, that's exploiting kids' fears. You don't like any of that stuff. And you
Mm.
know that you have enough information in your in your file to make sound admission decisions without it. Know that the transcript, which measures 4 years of production and not 4 hours like an ACT or an SAT, coupled with the school profile, the essays and the writing, the teacher and the counselor recs, and in some cases an interview, give us enough information to make a prudent admissions decision. You also know that you can actually become more selective because you'll get more applicants, lower your acceptance rate, become even more prestigious, climb up the pecking order of the rankings, and you know that kids with high test scores are still going to submit their scores, so your actual averages will be even higher. So you got all these things back and forth, weighing the pros versus the cons, and then you come in and you see some scam like this. It's just the kind of thing that can say, you know what, you're trying to decide, is it worth it, right? It's like this was it teeter totter? Was that name I used to be on the playground as a kid? Yeah, teeter totter. Oh my goodness, I'm making myself sound like I'm 80. I forgot those days. Like it's going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, right? And then this wouldn't be the only thing, but I have talked to more than one school that says we are really having those conversations, whether to just get out of this whole test prep game because of the whole insanity of it. Did that make sense? Did that make sense?
It does. And the saga
Moving on.
continues. We'll
Yep,
continue.
we'll take
on
one more
next.
episode about this, and then we'll be back to business. And sorry, by the way, our listeners, we did announce a different topic for In the News, but just based on all of the buzz around this, I kind of feel this is kind of, if we're going to call it In the News, and this is In the News, we got to be current sometimes and call an audible.
Now it's time for our step-by-step walkthrough of the college admissions process.
Okay, friends, we are doing something this time that we haven't done a lot of. We're trying to coordinate our interview with our chapter discussion. And so our interview last week was, of course, on the personal essay, how to bring yourself to life. And we'll be continuing to do that. And that's also what we're looking at in our book chapter discussion today. So the name of the chapter in this book I wrote, called 171 Answers, is what do admissions counselors look for in my personal statement or my main essay? Anika, any thoughts?
Sure do. Have some. So I know was it recently that we talked about the whole feeling the pressure of when you're answering this essay question, you feel like you have to talk about some turmoil or some big,
Yes,
huge
a few
obstacle
weeks
and all
ago.
this stuff.
Yeah.
So but in the chapter, it says, tell me something that I don't know already in your application, whether that's obstacle or not. So I thought that was enlightening because it reminds me, like the interviewing process, like job interviewing. You highlight what's in your cover letter, what's not in your resume. That's your opportunity to bring those things out. And what makes the reader, have that aha moment about you. And it's funny because I just went on a college tour with Janaea just the other day. And so the aide, or I'm sorry, the what do you call it, the guide ambassador or whatever, she asked all the kids to, share something fun about themselves. So of course Shanae's like, my name is Shanae and my fun thing is track. I'm like, no, Naya, track isn't fun. I mean, it is fun, but no, that's not it. I didn't tell her this on the spot, but the point I'm trying to make is that, I told her that, girl, you went on YouTube and taught yourself how to braid and that's your new side hustle. That's fun. Or, you sketch so much on the internet on a computer screen that you taught yourself how to draw. Those are the kind of fun things that people like, wow, that's cool. Like what the cool factors are. So I thought that was helpful, that aha, like, oh, that's cool that we know this now about you outside of all the lines that you filled out in the other parts of the app.
Yeah, I mean, there's no question. Like if an admission officer reads your essay and they don't learn anything about you, then you're gonna feel like you just wasted their time, right? So they want to learn something about you. The other thing is really important it's really important that your essay is genuine and it's authentic in every aspect, right? Like it's authentic in that it's your voice, not your parents' voice, not your teacher's voice in terms of tone, in terms of style. It's important that your content is authentic. If you going on and on and on about, your love for science and, I'm reading your file and I'm seeing like really low grades in science. I read a recommendation from a science teacher and it's tepid at best. Like that's a problem, right? It's because it produces an insincerity. It's also important that an essay, when you talk about, talk about that aha moment a little bit more, Nika. What was your take from that aha moment? Was it just
Well, it was just I do correlate that to a cool factor. Like for me, aha is like wow. This is aha wow. Can we draw that parallel? It's just something that they just knew was something unique about you that wasn't in the standard part of the app. I mean, I don't know. I guess I'm not explaining it as best as I can, but
so?
I just feel like it's something that they just discovered about you that it's just like, okay, now I really know who you are in a good way, of course.
Yeah, so that's kind of what it is. Like the aha moment is not necessarily just a cool factor because I want everybody here thinking, oh man, I got to come up with something cool. It's not so much that it's more like okay, I just popped in my head, and how I'm with this corny stuff. I never did Rubik's cubes growing up. I mean, I remember trying it a couple times. I think it took me forever. Got frustrated. I finally solved it, but it was like, my brother could just do it really fast. So I was like, forget it. We're competitive, and I put it down. But Rubik's cube, right? Have you done it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was like, duh, stupid question mark.
And I did not. I didn't complete it, but
But
whatever.
it's like when this person finally gets done, it's like there's like this reaction, like, oh, I got this, and like a powerful essay, it like unlocks and explains the kid in a way that it kind of ties the whole picture together. I mean, it's not the best example. It'd almost be like if you can't see it all, and then you put on some glasses, and all of a sudden everything was like vivid, you know? And it's like, oh my goodness, now I understand what makes you tick. It kind of has that sort of quality about it. But this is important, and this is what's tricky. It has to be done in a way that one is authentic to the true person, but it also needs to be done in a way that enhances the value of the student to the institution. Like a really good essay should be like, aha, I get this kid, and it should create almost an emotional or visceral connection between the reader and the applicant in a way that makes you think, not aha, I get this kid, but the really best ones are, and I want to have this kid on my campus. And so what's tricky about that is a lot of times people start out with the wrong starting point of what do I need to say in order to get them to want me? And that's always the wrong starting point. But yet the really, really good ones do, in an authentic way, make you say, oh my goodness, now I get this kid and I really want them here. Does that make sense?
It does, yes.
And we can never, ever forget WIIFM. Do you want to explain that to our listeners, Anika?
Nope, because I can't remember.
That's a good, honest answer. That's a good, honest answer. So it's something I always tell, I always say this to students. I said, the whole world is tuned into one radio station, and it's called WIIFM. And then I asked them, what does that mean? You see their heads scrambling. I have not got one person to get it yet. And some of them have been close. And it's just an acronym that stands for What is in it for me? And so that's part of the trickiness of writing, of good writing, is how can you reveal yourself in an authentic way. It's really good if you can show some of your struggle and self-reflection, because that shows growth, and then convey who you are and what makes you tick. Who you are and what makes you tick. I mean, a really good essay will always say, this is who I am, or this is why I am this way. That's always a theme of a really good essay. Of course, and it's the power of story that makes it come alive and makes it interesting. But if it's, this is who I am and this is why I'm this way, and now I just learned that you're like the biggest slacker, lazy kid ever, that's that's a turnoff, right? So it's finding what is a way to do that in a way that makes you really, really attractive to the.
So the WIIFM is for the person
Correct.
reading your essay. Is like, what am I getting from you out
Yeah,
of what you're telling
many
me?
essays, they go on and on and on, like about the story, but it doesn't relate at all to the school. Like, what's the point? Like, what is the point of this essay? Like by nature, every time I would read a file, I'm thinking, several things are going in the back of your mind, right? Like, who is this person? What are they about? That's going in the back of your mind. But the other thing that's going in your back of mind is, what are they bringing to our community? And what are they bringing to our community? Okay. And that doesn't have to be a talent. That can be, just something about their background or about their interests, their goals, or what they've overcome. But what are they bringing that is of value, that is going to make us stronger? So that's the tricky part, is how can you convey that, but not have your starting point be, what do I need to do to impress them?
Got it.
So we could say a lot more about this, but we do have a lot. We do have several more weeks where we're going to be talking about the writing, not only in our interview, but also in our book chapter discussion. One more thing, Anika, I love this quote from the Dean of Admissions at Princeton about the personal statement. And this is what she says. Please take time to work on your essays. We are looking for how well you write, because it's a reflection of how you think, and how you think is important to those of us on a college campus. Isn't that deep?
Awesomeness. It is.
It's time for a question from one of our listeners.
All right, Mark, our question this week is from Julie from Lakewood, Tennessee. And Julie writes this: we're getting down to crunch time for my child to make a decision by May, while we are still awaiting some competitive scholarship information that will definitely help us that will definitely help lean us in certain directions. I guess my question to you is how to help my child make a decision about college. He's down to 3 options, and they're each good in their own way, but he hasn't found that one school that checks everything off on his list. And there are certain things he likes about each one. He is struggling, as we are as his parents, to make that final decision, since each option is a great one. It's a great position to be in. However, I would love any advice on how to help him make this final decision, and in addition, how to help him feel confident in his choice and not second guess it all summer long. Ooh, that's tough.
Well, it's a great question. I really was grateful for Julie from Lakeland, which is just outside the Memphis area. I learned that through emailing her back and forth. But not only did Julie send this question in, but we had 3 people ask this question. So we said, we better take this question on. And it's a really good one, right? And it basically boils down to, how do I make a final decision? I got choices. And so now I'm going to take you back, Anika, and see how good your memory is. But do you remember when Jalen was looking at Episcopal High School, just outside of DC, and Asheville, and Woodbury Forest for boarding school. And you guys could not go. I think a certain mom was pulling for one school, and a certain dad had a view, and a certain student had a view. And
and we had a certain referee that had to come in and put us in our corners.
That would be me. That would be me. One of my many hats I wear, referee. So this is now going back. Remember. This is like 8 years ago, right? So Nick and I, we've known each other for almost 10. And so do you remember the exercise that I had Jalen do? Because it actually...
I do remember that.
Tell our listeners, because that's still the same exercise they use to this day. So tell our listeners about the exercise.
That's so awesome. I'm so glad I remember, because it was really eye-opening for me. And so what you had him do was you had him create a list of the pros and cons for each school. So he literally went through, okay, I like this, and this about it, but these are the things I don't like about it. And what was fascinating to me is that most of his pros were my cons, and most of his cons were my pros for the school that I wanted for him. Now, needless to say, he did not go to the school I was that I was pulling for. But I just thought that was so interesting. It was so helpful, number one, because I didn't know how we were going to get out of that rut. Because he loved both what he liked. He really liked both schools. So that really helped him go through that exercise of, okay, let's just really just take it down to a science a little bit. I thought that was awesome.
So there was everything you said is correct, but there's a part 2 to the exercise that maybe I might need to jog your mind, because I'll be honest, when I was probably 10 years old, I knew about make a pros and cons list. So that really wasn't new. But I don't know if you remember, the other thing I had Jalen do is to write a number from 1 to 10 beside each of the points on the list. And I called this an importance scale. So let's say, he said, smaller classes, felt like home, closer to home, blah, 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 all the, whatever they were. I don't remember all the particulars back then. I remember what you wanted, and I remember what you liked. But anyway, so when Jalen did this, he found that where he eventually ended up selecting, which we've said on the podcast before, Woodbury Forest, a lot of the points he had down for them had like 8, 9s, and 10s on the list. And so it's not just the pros and cons, it's assigning an important score to each of them. So that becomes a very, very, very valuable exercise that I've used with so many students. I remember how Jalen's mind literally switched from one boarding school being his top choice to another with this exercise. And I also remember doing the same exercise with Jalen again when I was his college counselor, and he was down to Davidson, Duke, and Washington University in St. Louis. So that's one tip that I give everybody. The other tip I give, and this tends to work a little bit better for people that believe in God, but most people I find do believe in God, and they're very open to this. So I tell people to pray on a decision, wait, and don't do anything unless you're completely at peace about it. And then when people like pray and wait, all of a sudden they kind of get a peace about one option versus another. So that's one thing I tell them. And the other thing is, okay, you have until May 1st to make this decision. A lot of times people are feeling a lot of anxiety, but the anxiety is because it's like 25th. You still got another 5 weeks. Right. And so a lot of times it's almost like, I'm going to use the same illustration twice in one podcast. It's like your eyes can't see, and then you put on a new set of glasses and a picture comes into clarity. So it's a lot like that, right? Where the fog and the mist get removed over time as your vision gets clear. And so a lot of times what may not be clear on March 25th feels a lot clearer on April 25th. So that's another thing. A third thing that I say is, if possible, this doesn't always work, but if possible, go back to the 2 institutions in question. Take another visit, if possible. And when you take another visit, try to take the visit from a different perspective. All right? Try to do, like I was just talking to one of my students about this probably 2 or 3 weeks ago. She's having a hard time deciding. And I was telling her this whole thing. She said, "Oh, you want me to do a day in the life of?" I'm like, "Yes, I want you to do a day in the life of." if it's possible to stay overnight in the dorms, I want you to do that. And sometimes the school may not allow that, but you can work through your connections, and find somebody who or somebody else knows who will allow you to stay with them overnight. Do that. If you haven't sat in classes, I want you to do that. And my favorite thing to do on any campus visit is to just start randomly talking to students. I'm going to talk more about this in another episode coming up, Anika, about what I do when I visit a campus. I'm going to get into the questions I ask and the answers that they elicit, but talking to students that the admissions office did not assign to you. And then another thing that I always try to say is block out the noise. And I hate to say that, but you know who the noise is, Anika?
The parents.
It's not just the parents. It's the brother and the sister. It's Aunt Jenny. It's teachers. It's everybody. And you know what? I always say them. You know what I always say? Who's going to the school? You or everybody else? Like, you're the one that's going, and you got to make this decision for you, because you can bet that everybody's going to have an opinion on it for you. The one exception where parents may need to step in concerns the area of affordability. You have to vet every school for affordability. Now, if you haven't listened to our discussion on episode 21 about this, you really need to do that. And if you have my book, 171 Answers, I strongly encourage you to go back and read that, because there's a lot more detail there. But it's very important that you come up with a maximum amount you can afford, and you agree upon in advance how much each of you will pay, the student and the parent. It is essential that you stay within your agreed upon budget in advance, and you do not get sucked in by the marketing of the college or your feeling that if your child doesn't go to college X, that they won't be happy. The desire to let your child go wherever they want is a very powerful emotion, but resist this urge if it exceeds the maximum amount you've agreed on in advance that both of you will pay for college. One thing my students know, like sometimes they'll be like, Mark, I've got this option. Which one should I go to? And you know that they will not get that answer out of me. I will tell them exercises. I'll tell them things that they have to do, but it has to be the self-discovery process that comes from them. So try to block out the other voices that are telling you what to do. And then the last thing, and this is really, really, really important, and this is really hard for extremely analytical people, because let's face it, even that exercise they gave, that's a very analytical exercise, write things down, assign a scale of 1 to 10. You got to trust your instincts. You have to go with your gut. Now, that does not mean that you don't read. You should be reading everything you can. You should be all over their website, all over anything that's important to you. If you're concerned about student life, you should read everything about student life. If you're concerned about the major and the curriculum requirements, you should read that. If you're concerned about the quality of the faculty, you should be doing that. You should be talking with faculty. You should be doing all of those things. Research. I'm a researcher. But at the end of the day, you have to trust your instincts. It's so important. What are you thinking, Anika?
I'm thinking you are right. Times 35. Yeah. All of that.
Times 35 is pretty good. I was going to get greedy and say 35. Why not 45?
Oh, infinity. Yeah, it only makes sense. What other way is there to do it? What other way is there to really get down to the meat of it? Yeah, there it is.
Well, I don't say it in a fatalistic way. I say because this process works. Like I've just taken so many students through it. Like it really, really does work. And sometimes when it's not feeling like it's working, it's because it's April 7th. And sometimes people, they're really well intentioned. They're like, I just don't want to tell the school at the last minute. Blah, blah. You know what? You have until May 1st for most schools.
Exactly.
If you need that time, then you take your sweet time.
That's right. Oh, Julie, good luck, because that is a great problem to have. What you got there, lady?
Julie, Melissa in New York, and everybody else who sent this question in. Thank you. Okay, friends, if you've enjoyed part 1 and part 2 of my interview with Susan Tree, I think you're really going to love part 3. And if you haven't listened to the last two, please go back and listen to them. In part 3, Susan tackles the question, how many people should review the essay and give feedback? A classic question, how many is too many? Then Susan discusses how English teachers often look for different things than college admissions counselors when it comes to essays. She explains how invaluable English teachers are in the process, but how their perspective is different from that of an admissions officer. Then I asked the question to Susan, how vulnerable should a student get in their essay? Susan talks about the 5 different writing portions that exist within a file, and how when we think about student writing, we need to not just limit ourselves to the personal essay or the personal statement, but think about the writing in its totality. Susan and I then have a great conversation about the additional information section, and we share a very common view that we both share that is not what you hear that often out there in the admissions world. Then we talk about how many words should the personal statement be. Is there such a thing as too short when it comes to your personal statement? And finally, Susan closes part 3 of 4 by talking about the importance of the introduction and the different ways to stand out in your introduction. Listen and enjoy.
And now, this week's interview with a special guest.
That's great. Let's talk about how many people should review and what your thoughts are on that, because that's been tricky for me to figure out that. Sometimes I've got a student and then the mom reads it and the dad reads it and the English teacher reads it and the friend reads it and Uncle Bob and Aunt Barbara read it, and then the student loses their voice in the process. But yet at the same time, some feedback has merit. So what advice do you give to people that say, who should I have look at my work? And how many people?
Yeah, this is a tough one.
It's tough for me too.
Yeah, it's a tough
I'm glad to know it's not only tough for me. You've been doing this twice as long as me.
Well, and some students want to shop their essay around, and working at a high school, I always asked when students brought me their essays, I would always say, "What stage is this at?" Meaning, who's it been through already? Because one thing I learned is that, at our high school, kids wrote college essays as part of the senior English curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
So many of them had already written essays over the summer, and they, as part of their summer reading assignment, they had to bring 2 essays that they had written to their senior English teacher. So when I saw essays, often they had been through the English teacher review, and English teachers are not college admissions officers. English teachers are English teachers.
I'm really glad you said that, because I find that students think the English teacher is like the ultimate authority, and it can put you in some awkward situations because you don't want to throw the English teacher under the bus, but they just are not looking at it the same way at all.
Not at all. Not at all. And but yet they're very valuable. And I think any school that has a system like this is lucky indeed, where it's built in to the system. And, more power to the English faculty that they use the college essay as one of the genres, of important writing. But because it's part of it, it's going to be evaluated as part of a complicated jigsaw puzzle of credentials. English teachers don't always, I always wished I could take them to a college and have them sit and read like 100 applications so they could understand.
Right. What do you feel they're missing? Because we know they're good on grammar and punctuation and proofing. What do you feel that, obviously it's not all of them either. We got to be very careful not to do the broad stroke of the brush thing, right? So, But what are some things you would say that you've seen English teachers are like? What do you think they would learn if they did what you said? They could sit around committee or read 500 app files themselves.
Well, I think a personal statement is just what we've been talking about. It's revealing it's revealing personality, but at the same time conveying important contextual information. And I think English teachers are not. That specific purpose of that essay is very different from writing an essay about, say, like a persuasive essay, an argumentative essay.
Right.
Where you're taking a topic and you're defending your opinion. That's very important because you're going to write millions of those in college. But where you are writing a revealing, self-analytical essay that at the same time is conveying information. I mean, I've had many English teachers say to kids, well, you really shouldn't, say this because it's awfully personal. Or they'll say, you should say more about this because it's not personal. It's just they don't necessarily have the context, but their feedback is very, very valuable. But it I think if you have that perspective in terms of the mechanics of your writing, it's great. Now, some English teachers, you and I know a few of them at Westtown who had the whole thought. They were superlative.
Yeah.
But they seldom, teachers seldom do.
Yeah, I learned from one of those great English teachers at Westtown and the importance of rewriting, and how essential multiple drafts are. That's just critical. Now here's a question for you: vulnerability, and you just touched on it. So, how does a student? Well, first of all, how important is vulnerability, and how does a student know when they're giving too much private information or personal? When do you feel it crosses the line? So it's tough, isn't it? It's because one of those things, it when you see it.
Yeah, but it's really important for students to think about their application as a whole opus. It's kind of a work. And each part of the application, you have to think about each part individually, but also in relationship to the other parts. So you have to unpack the different writing assignments that are part of an average college application. The essay is never the only, well, I shouldn't say never, probably is at some schools, but generally speaking, there are 4 or 5 writing exercises as part of an application. And students tend to channel 99% of their energy into this personal statement. And I'll tell you this, having read all these applications.
I know what you're going to say. How important the school-specific essays are? Is that where you're going?
Yeah. Well, that the polish on the personal statement is terrific, and then the writing throughout the rest of the application is a mess. And grammatically, and I mean the contrast between them. So think about it. So you've got the personal statement, the 650 words on the Common App or the Coalition or whatever. Then you've got the additional information section. So I'm thinking here particularly of the Common App and the Coalition App. Individual colleges that have their own applications can be structured a little differently. But the additional information section is optional. It's one of the most underutilized parts of the application because kids see,
I'm going to do a whole session on that. A whole session on that, right?
So you've got another 650 words in additional information, and that's a wild card. That's a total wild card. The instructions are, if you have something else to say, here's where to say it. Then there's the short writing on a change or interruption in your schooling. Okay, so if you've changed schools or you repeated a grade or you were out on a leave of absence for some reason, you're expected to provide some information there. Then there's the discipline paragraph. So if you've been disciplined, you're obligated to share information about that, right? And then there are the college-specific questions, if they have them. Not everybody has them. But for example, the university that I'm reading for this winter requires the student to reflect on the college's motto. Boy, that produced a lot of very dreary responses. Oh my gosh. But, it is what it is. It means a lot to them. Or to include a research paper abstract. So if you've conducted independent research or an independent study, to put in your abstract. And then it can be a creative submission. So it could be artwork, it could be a audio file, it could be a website showing, your dance, whatever. It really can be anything creative, and it can be in any format. So when I see a YouTube link or an audio file link, I need to go look at what's there, which I enjoy a lot, but I end up wasting a lot of time because I tend to like to look around and see what else is there. So there are 5 areas where you are writing about stuff, at least for a lot of colleges. And truthfully, the more selective the college, the more you may be asked institution-specific questions.
I'm really glad you commented on that, and because my plan is to have other people on to talk about various aspects, like have someone come on specifically to talk about additional information, addendum, and then school specific. But you're putting it in that bigger context. I am curious, Susan, what percentage of people, let's just say this year, took advantage of the additional information versus just leaving it blank? Blank, would you say? I mean, obviously it's anecdotal.
10%. I'm surprised.
It's that low. I thought you were going to say 30.
No,
Wow.
That's been one of my big shockers this year, is because at my high school, at Westtown School, I always said to kids regarding additional information, the only wrong response is no response.
Yeah, I feel the same way.
Yeah, if you don't put something in there,
it's a missed opportunity.
Yeah, so, describe your activities a little bit further. You all complain about how you're just listing your activities and they're not going to know what work program is, or, the weird service project you went on, or, things where it's a school specific title, or tell them about your Eagle Scout project, or what it's like to care for your grandmother who has Alzheimer's. Rather than just listing something, flesh it out, for Pete's sake. Or put in something that maybe you didn't want to write about at length in your essay. Like, say you want to write your essay on moving, you're in a military family and you've moved 10 times. That's a framework for a very, very, very interesting essay. So in your additional information, you might want to talk about, now I'm not going to have any good ideas, but, taking care of younger siblings. So you can view these as 2 complete essays. So, which one goes where probably matters less. Now, the question in my mind, though, Mark, is I heard once that colleges don't all download the additional information. Now, the university that I'm reading for does.
I think that's got to be the majority do, though. I mean, based on my conversations with admission officers, I mean, because I do know that's important, that to explain why was there a C in 10th grade and everything else is A's. Oh, you got a chance to talk about the fact that your grandmother died, or that you had mono, or and so, I mean, oftentimes admission officers say, we can't read your mind, and if you tell the story, that's only one reason to write, right? But that is a good reason to explain certain things that may potentially be flags.
I agree.
But I think it's also an opportunity to reiterate your passions too, and make that impression on an admissions officer. I do find that most admission counselors don't give the advice that you and I are giving, though, Susan. I find most of them say use it when it makes sense, but don't do it if it doesn't make sense. That's what But I think there's always a reason why you could.
I do
I mean,
too.
and you gave great examples. You can further. There's not a lot of room in the extracurricular section, so it's an excellent opportunity to provide some context there.
Because, I look down the list of extracurricular and work experiences on a Common App, for example,
Right.
now, and I'm supposed to be reading 4 applications an hour,
Yeah.
but I don't. I'm
Right.
not. I can't go that fast. But we're not lollygagging through these applications. So, when a student lists an activity and I have no idea what it is, and the one sentence, there's like I think 180 characters where you can say what it is.
I think it's 150, and maybe it's 180, but it's not a lot. I think it's 150, but it's not either. If it's 150 or 180, those are characters, not words, so they're not a lot. And we always have students. I always have students say, "Oh my goodness, I ran out of space right away. There's no room there."
I know. And so if you have a profound feeling about something that you're doing, or a great learning, or, I can't tell you how many kids list their activities and I never know what they're doing in the activity. So I don't know what their role was. And that's what admissions people want to know is, okay, you did robotics, great, or you're in Model UN, or you're in the band, or all these cool things. But what was your role? What did you do? And of course, what did you learn? So sometimes in 150 characters, you could say more than that, but you'd be amazed at how many applicants, like, I never know what instrument they played, or what kind of band they formed with their 3 friends in their garage, or those are so telling. They're so important for me to understand more about this applicant. And if you choose not to share that with me, okay. But so then that piece of you goes away as far as I'm concerned. I don't carry it with me because it wasn't personal enough. But then in your additional information, if you write about that garage band, because your mother threw you out of, your house with your friends, or, when you started producing, videos for Vine and songwriting, or you taught yourself the harp watching, the internet, or oh my gosh, those are wonderful, amazing things that make you who you are. And if you put everything into these generic categories on the Common App and don't ever flesh them out, then you never really become an individual.
I'm really, really glad that you fleshed that out, because I was not even planning on going there. In my mind, I compartmentalized. Let's do a whole interview on that and talk about how important it is. But I'm so glad you put it in the broader context of all your writing. That was fantastic.
Well, and so what if there is, a bump in the road to explain, a really terrible relationship with the teacher, or illness, or the death of a friend. I mean, I can think of many things that kids write about. You may not feel moved to write your big essay about that stuff. Kids are worried that if they write their big essay about mono, or being dyslexic, or, their father's unemployment, or then that they sound like they're whining, or, looking for pity, which of course we don't assume that they are, but that's where additional information can get down and dirty on some of these issues. And then they can kind of let their brightest light shine if they feel like they need to be writing something about something in a much more affirmative way. They just can have more peace. I find kids often have more peace of mind when they use that additional information section. And it's kind of the by the way, you'll notice the spring of my sophomore year or whatever. But, kids realize that colleges want more information rather than less information. That's an important rule to remember. More is better than less. And I hate to say the devil they know is better than the devil they don't know, but what I mean by that is they will draw the worst possible conclusion if you don't tell them what's going on.
Yeah, but they have to minimize the risk, right? Admission's about risk reward. And if you've got risky factors out there and they don't go explained, especially in competitive pools, you're just, how can I justify taking this risk versus this other kid who also has strengths with less risks?
That's right. And kids need to realize colleges will not be prejudiced against students who experienced certain things or who struggle with certain handicaps or, this isn't a contest for who has lived the perfect high school life.
I think, Susan, what you're talking about here is one of the biggest things I learned doing co-counseling with you the 9 years we did. I can remember multiple students that had some type of infraction, and I thought they're doomed in the college admission process initially. But then they wrote about it so authentically and descriptively that admission officers in many cases, even at selective schools, gave them grace, especially if they articulated their growth. And I think that people, they know that we're humans. We're all works in progress, right?
That's right. That's right. And there's a rising concern about perfectionism and teenagers who we all know they're not perfect, right?
Mm-hmm.
We hope they're not.
Mm-hmm.
That would be, that just isn't going to exist in reality. But kids who either feel compelled to present a perfection image, are a concern, and it can actually backfire. Because we all know that we learn through trial and error,
Mm-hmm.
that if we don't do that as kids, then it's going to be a much bigger disaster later in life. I mean, and that's hard when you're parenting, right, Mark?
Mm-hmm.
If your kids make mistakes, and we want to wrap our kids in bubble wrap and shield them from all of this. But, parents, I think, by and large, understand that you gotta, it's the blessing of the skinned knee, that wonderful book that every parent should read. That if we don't fall down and learn to get back up, then the next time the fall is even greater. We won't know anything. It's hard to go through as a parent, though. I've been there.
Right. Well, haven't we both?
Let's take a break to learn about Mark's recommended resource for the week.
Because the personal essay is so important, I decided to do something different and share some of my favorite recommended resources about the college essay for each of the 4 parts of my interview with Susan Tree. So the recommended resource for episode 61 is the book on writing the college application essay, the 25th edition, subtitled The Key to Acceptance at the College of Your Choice. It's by Harry Bald, and it's a classic book that was released 33 years ago in 1986. Now, the revised edition of this book, which was updated in 2012, absolutely belongs in the conversation for the best book you can buy on a college essay, in my opinion. The author, Harry Bald, has a wealth of knowledge, having been a college admissions counselor and a boarding school admission counselor as well. He worked in the admission offices at Columbia, Brown, and at the Putney Boarding School. He's also been a school college counselor and a nationally acclaimed English teacher. Chapter 11 alone is worth the price of the book, where actual essays are listed, where what Harry Bald does is he gets actual admission officers to read different essays and to comment on them and give their feedback. So you get to see how an admission counselor processes an essay. And it's not just one perspective, but you actually get 4 perspectives, which is fantastic. What Bald does throughout this book is he uses his experience in the admission office to share insights as to how one essay could be perceived as amazing in the minds of one admission counselor and mediocre in the eyes of another. This book, along with the gatekeepers, showcases the subjectivity of the admission process as well as any of the books I'm aware of. The book has humor, it has wit, it has insight, and it does the best job of any of the college essay books on helping the reader to know their audience and really understand the importance of knowing your audience. It also does an amazing job of emphasizing how the student needs to present their own authentic voice. The book is short, concise, very conversational in its style, and it does an extraordinary job at helping students with their introductions and their conclusions. Now return to part 3 of my interview with Susan Tree about the personal essay. Our topic is, don't miss the opportunity to fill in the gaps and bring yourself to life. Talk to me about the length of the personal statement, Susan. Let's stick with the Comment App. We know Coalition has a different word count. It varies there, but obviously Comment App 800 schools and growing every year. I remember in 2014. Remember when I did my video series, Game Changer, that I did? Yeah, that was like 2014, and there were like 450 Common App schools, and now we've gone from 450 to almost double in 5 years. But obviously there can be, and it's going to vary tremendously, but there can be such a thing as too few words. I mean, you can't write a 50-word Comment App. Although I heard about someone from Stanford putting Black Lives Matter and getting in. That's all they put. but it's not advice I would give people. It's pretty risky. What are your thoughts on minimum lengths?
Well,
can it be 200 and be good? Can it be 300, or do you feel like you're not developing your thoughts enough?
If the personal statement, if that essay is the only piece of writing in the application, then we have to go back to the beginning of our conversation, saying where the essay has to be your demonstration of your very best writing.
Right.
So, I have read some applications this year where the personal statement was poetry or kind of a rap kind of format. But then in additional information was, I think, a more standard essay. So I think what you have to, as an applicant, remember is that you are being asked to submit your best. So it doesn't have to be 650 words, but you have to show that you can write a mechanically sound, well-developed essay, right? The instructions are write an essay, right? It doesn't say write anything.
Right.
So, but if in the application there's plenty more writing in it, demonstrating your command of the English language and your ability to develop your ideas, then go ahead. I mean, be yourself.
Do you think someone runs the risk if they do like a 200-word essay that they're perceived as being lazy and taking, the easy way out? Or do you feel that's not necessarily the case if it's that good?
My opinion is it depends what else is in the application.
Okay.
If then in the additional information section, there's a well-developed essay, maybe on your learning style or whatever you want to tell, that shows you can write a well-developed essay. Fine. Or maybe the place for the 200-word rap poetry is in the creative submission section, and you go with something a little more predictable. You just have to look and see what the college gives you as an opportunity to write. And if all you're getting is one opportunity, then you better show them you know how to write.
Right. And that's going to involve some more thought development than would probably be able to be done in less than 1/3 of the word length.
Oh, I agree. I've read a number of them this year, where it's a 1-paragraph response.
Any really good ones, or was it okay with you because you had so many other sources of writing and in your applications, or what were your thoughts?
And these were kids who didn't have
Yeah,
anything else.
that's
They wrote a one paragraph essay, and then for the supplement, they wrote 2 or 3 sentences on the motto, and you end up writing in your evaluation very thin. The term college admissions people use is thin.
Thin and thick. Neither one is good. To be thin or to be thick.
That's right. That's right. So, I think as soon as you hit 400 words, 400 to 500, you're probably safe if you're a good writer. The less you write, the better you have to write, though, because you're demonstrating more with less.
And what can you share about introductions and conclusions?
Great question. Well, I think we talked a little bit about introductions earlier, where it's the word is out that everybody's supposed to start their essays with a story. And I think that's just how kids are taught in high school, where you're inviting the reader into the essay.
Yeah. I mean, would you agree with the thought that, readers are reading so much that if the first few sentences aren't interesting, people are human, and it's really easy for the mind to just sort of go on cruise control.
Yes, but I don't think it has to be a story. You don't have to. I don't think you have to launch into, the cold air hit my face as I opened the window, and somebody 20 years ago started saying that the most important thing is to entertain the admissions reader, and you better start like you're writing Moby Dick or Jane Eyre or something, and put the reader into your experience. You can do that. There's nothing wrong with that. But kids...
No, it's not the only way. It's not the only way. I mean, I see lots of great essays that start out with a declarative statement.
Yes.
Just a declarative statement that it just hits you right, and it's like, wow, a declarative statement can really draw you in too.
Absolutely. At some students this year, I'm finding, and I find this very interesting because it's different. They're actually starting backwards. They almost write their essays backwards.
Do you find they're doing it well, or have you seen it being done well or not?
Yeah. It tends to be kids who are good writers and are writing with some boldness. But they're, it's like the takeaway, and then they unpack it and they go in. But there are lots of good ways to write. But a good essay has to have a solid introduction. I mean, the reader should know in the first paragraph what the point is. And I always say to kids, and I said this to my students for years, what's your point? What's the point? Now, some people are taught to write essays by stating their point in the first sentence of the second paragraph. Meaning the first paragraph is putting the reader there, bringing the reader into your experience. It tends to be very emotional. It tends to use a lot of descriptive words. And then, it used to be you always ended your first paragraph with your topic sentence. And then there's this big trendy thing going on where English teachers must have been saying, start your second paragraph with your topic sentence. The thing is, with 650 words, you don't have a lot of time.
Yeah, and you don't need to restate the prompt in your first sentence or two either, right? You definitely don't need to do that.
That's right. But now that, with the topic of your choice, you've got to make your point even more declarative.
Let's explain that. So, some people may not be following that. Why don't you explain what you're referring to there, Susan, as far as one of the essay options?
That's right. One of the options for the Common App and the Coalition essay is it just simply says an essay on the topic of your choice, and that's a fallback for a lot of kids who then can use something maybe they've already written for another purpose. But you have to be careful about that, because this essay has a very specific purpose, and you've probably never written this kind of essay.
Yeah. So it may not be the place to just take the English paper and stuff it in.
That's right. You know how, the metaphor of the Cheshire Cat in Alice Through the Looking Glass is really, the Soviet Union's relationship with pre-Cold War, whatever. Great, interesting, and might be useful somewhere else, but this is this has to be, as we said at the very beginning, deeply personal and revealing, and providing context that the admissions people need to make sense of all the other information, in the application. In a way, and this is where a good college counselor can help a student. You put the student's transcript on the table, you put the test scores, if they're required, on the table, you have these different pieces, and you say to the student, what do we need to explain? What do they need to know?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, they need to know, that when I came to this school, it was so much harder than my other school. The grades were much less inflated, and I suddenly was in a much, so on and so forth. The kids often come up with the, oh my goodness, so then I always say to the students, well, who's going to tell them about this? If it's me, I'd like you to tell me how you'd like me to say that. And if it's you, let's talk about how you're going to say that. It should probably be both of us from our own unique perspectives, depending on what it is. And it's just great for kids then to think about it holistically as if they were reading the application. But, very few high school kids get that opportunity. They kind of have to know to do that. And they don't think of that. It's like, well, what looks weird? Does anything look weird on my transcript? It's like, oh, why didn't I have math in my sophomore year? Or why did I leave French after French 2 and started Latin, as a sophomore or a junior? It's like, all that stuff is weird. And it's not bad weird, but someone's got to talk about it. And what I've learned, Mark, sadly, is stuff that I took for granted that I, as a college counselor, always explained in my letters, is seldom being explained by the school. So I think kids should understand that they bear the primary responsibility for talking about anything that's a little, non-sequential or out of the ordinary.
Next week in the news, how some of LA's most privileged kids fake disability to cheat the system. And we'll be in chapter 62 of 171 answers, and we'll talk through the biggest mistakes applicants make with their personal statements and essays. And next week, it's that time again for our bonus content. And Mark concludes his interview with Susan Tree in the final part of writing the personal essay. Don't miss your opportunity to fill in the gaps and bring yourself to life. And that's our show. A big thank you to you, our listeners, for tuning in this week. And if you found this podcast helpful, it would help us tremendously if you would subscribe and write us a review on your favorite podcast listening station. And please be sure to click the share button and send this to someone you know that could really use this information. Your College Bound Kid is produced by John Lockenbaugh. The amazing music that you hear is by Victor Allen Weeks. Artwork is by Andrea Togo. And marketing designs are by Kimberly Blass. If you want to get a copy of the book 171 Answers to the Most Asked College Admissions Questions, you can go right to 171answers.com. And if you want to have a college coaching session with Mark, you can send him a text to area code 404-664-4340.
And if you have a question or a few questions that you would like for us to answer on the show, please email us at questions@yourcollegeboundkid.com. That's questions with an S at yourcollegeboundkid.com. Every week, we'll take one question and include it in the episode. We don't like your questions. We love your questions, so send them our way. And by the way, check out our website, which is just simply yourcollegeboundkid.com. Again, we thank you for tuning in, and we look forward to meeting with you again next week.